The sun was sinking low over the Wyoming plains, spilling a honey-colored glow across the dry fields. The air shimmered with heat, heavy with dust and silence. A lone figure stumbled out from the far end of the ranch road, barefoot, limping, her white dress clinging to her skin, streaked with mud and blood. Her name was Clara. She didn't remember how far she had walked or how long she had been running. All she knew was that she couldn't stop now. Behind her, somewhere beyond the hills, the echo of what she escaped still burned in her ears, men shouting, boots pounding, and the sharp crack of a rifle. She collapsed beside an old well, gasping for air. Her throat was so dry it hurt to breathe. The last thing she saw before her eyes blurred was a horse, tall, chestnut brown, glinting under the fading light, and the shadow of a man stepping down from it. "Ma'am. You all right?" The voice was low, calm, and rough-edged like gravel. She blinked up at him, a cowboy, tall and lean, his face half-shadowed by the brim of his black hat. He had the look of someone who'd seen too much of the world and didn't talk about it. His red bandana fluttered in the wind as he crouched beside her, eyes scanning the bruises on her arms. "Please," Clara's lips trembled. "I'm begging you, hurry up." He frowned. "Hurry up for what?" She pressed a shaking hand against her chest. "Snake, it bit me. Few miles back. My leg, it's swelling fast." He looked down and saw the angry red mark on her calf, already darkening around the edges. Without another word, he tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped it tight above the wound. Then, before she could even think, he leaned down and... She froze, staring at him as he sucked the venom out of her leg and spat it into the dirt. His movements were quick, deliberate, not a hint of hesitation. When he was done, he wiped his mouth and looked up at her. "You're lucky I found you when I did." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Why would you help me?" He stood and extended his hand. "Because out here, no one else will." Clara took his hand, her palm trembling. He lifted her with ease, his arm steady around her waist as she tried to stand. She could barely walk, but he supported her toward his horse. Every step felt like an eternity, and with each breath, she felt the venom's fire creeping slower through her veins. As he lifted her onto the horse, she whispered, "Who are you?" He adjusted his hat, eyes on the horizon. "Name's Luke Callahan. I own the ranch up yonder. You can rest there till you're fit to ride again." The ride back was silent except for the rhythm of hooves and Clara's ragged breathing. The sunset bled into twilight, and the plains grew colder. She leaned against his chest, half conscious, hearing only the steady beat of his heart and the distant call of coyotes. When they reached the ranch, Luke dismounted and carried her inside. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine wood, simple but warm. He laid her on a couch near the fire, covering her with a wool blanket. "Stay awake," he told her. "You sleep now, and you might not wake up." She tried to focus on his face, the faint scar under his jaw, the way his eyes softened for a moment before hardening again. "You shouldn't have helped me," she whispered. "They'll come looking." He paused. "Who?" She looked away. "The men I ran from. They think they own me." Luke's jaw tightened. "Not on my land, they don't." Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the barn. The night was creeping in, the kind of night when secrets felt heavier. He moved to the window, hand resting on the rifle that leaned against the wall. "Rest easy," he said quietly. "Anyone comes near this place, I'll know before they do." But Clara couldn't rest. Every creak of the wood, every howl outside made her flinch. In her mind, she still heard the laughter of the men she'd escaped, the way they'd cornered her at the riverbank. She thought she'd die there, unseen and forgotten. But then, he appeared. Luke sat across from her, watching the fire. His expression was unreadable, part concern, part something else she couldn't name. "You from the east?" he asked after a while. She nodded weakly. "Came here with my husband. He gambled everything away, then sold me to pay his debt." Her voice cracked. They were going to, she stopped, tears sliding down her cheeks. Luke's knuckles whitened around his cup. He didn't speak, just stood and stoked the fire until the flames roared brighter. When he finally turned back, his eyes were cold as winter steel. "You ain't going back there," he said. "Not ever. But they'll come. Then they'll meet me." The conviction in his voice made her breath hitch. For the first time in weeks, she felt something close to safety. She drifted off as the storm of exhaustion pulled her under. Luke sat there long after she slept, staring into the flames. He knew the kind of men who'd done this. He'd been one of them once, before he walked away from that life. When dawn broke, the world was gold again. But out on the ridge, far beyond the Callahan Ranch, 3 riders appeared, dark shapes against the rising sun. Luke's eyes narrowed as he stepped outside, the wind tugging at his coat. He knew they were coming for her. And he also knew something else: he would never let them take her again. The morning broke quiet and sharp over the Callahan Ranch. Dew glistened on the golden grass, and smoke curled gently from the chimney. Inside, Clara stirred awake, her leg heavy and sore but alive. For the first time in days, she didn't wake to the sound of men shouting, only the soft creak of wood and the faint clang of metal outside. Luke was already up. She could hear him in the yard, saddling his horse, his movements firm and deliberate. Something in his silence felt different, harder, colder. She pushed herself up, the blanket slipping from her shoulders, and limped toward the window. Outside, she saw them. 3 riders. Dust trailing behind their horses like ghosts. They were coming fast, and she knew those faces. Her heart stopped. "No," she whispered, trembling. Luke saw her face through the window and didn't need to ask. He just nodded once, grabbed his rifle, and stepped down from the porch. "Get back inside," he said without turning. "Luke, please, don't. They'll kill you." He finally looked at her, calm as ever. "Not today." The men reined in their horses near the well, the same spot where Luke had found her the night before. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a jagged scar across his chin, spat into the dirt. "Morning, rancher," he said, his grin oily. "Heard you picked up something that belongs to us." Luke's jaw flexed. "She doesn't belong to anyone." The man laughed. "Everything out here belongs to somebody. She owes money. And when a woman can't pay—" Before he could finish, Luke raised his rifle and cocked it. The sound cut through the air like thunder. "You got 3 seconds to leave my land." The laughter died. The leader's hand drifted toward his holster, but Luke's rifle never wavered. "1," Luke said. The second man, younger, twitchy, spat, "You ain't got the guts." 2. Clara ran to the porch, tears spilling down her face. "Luke. Please don't do this." He didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed, steel cold. 3. The gunfire exploded. In the blur that followed, everything was chaos, horses rearing, dirt flying, bullets whizzing past. Luke dropped one man before he could even aim, then ducked behind the well as another shot cracked the wooden post beside him. Clara screamed his name, but the sound was lost in the thunder of hooves and gunpowder. Then, silence. When the smoke cleared, 2 men lay still in the dust. The leader, the one with the scar, was on his knees, clutching his bleeding arm. His pistol was gone, and Luke stood over him, rifle leveled, eyes burning with something darker than anger. "You can't save her," the man spat. "She's damaged goods. You don't know what she's done." Luke didn't move. "I don't care what she's done. I care what you did." He lowered the rifle slowly, and then did the unthinkable. He tossed the gun aside. Instead of killing the man, he knelt, grabbed him by the collar, and said quietly, "You're going to ride out of here. You're going to tell every man you work for that Clara is under my protection. If anyone comes within a mile of this ranch, they won't make it back." The man's eyes widened. "You think you can scare us?" Luke's voice dropped to a whisper that froze the air. "No. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm promising you." He let the man go, kicked his gun into the dirt, and stepped back. "Ride." The man stumbled to his horse, one arm hanging limp, and galloped off toward the horizon, leaving his dead behind. Clara ran to Luke, her heart pounding, tears streaking her face. "You should have killed him. He'll come back." Luke turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Maybe. But I won't be like them. I won't become what I used to be." She stared at him, confused. "What you used to be?" He took a slow breath. "Before this ranch, before I found peace. I worked as a gun for hire. Did terrible things for men like him. I thought I could bury that part of me out here, but when I saw you, when I saw what they did," he looked down, voice breaking slightly. "I knew I had to make it right, not with blood, but by changing the story." Clara touched his arm gently. "You saved my life." He met her eyes, and for the first time, the hardness melted away. "Maybe you saved mine." The wind carried the last traces of smoke across the prairie. The sky was wide open again, the morning light stretching golden across the land. Luke picked up his rifle and walked toward the barn, shoulders heavy with everything he'd done, and everything he hadn't. Later that evening, Clara sat by the fire, watching the flames flicker against the window. The sound of boots approached behind her, and Luke's quiet voice broke the silence. "You'll be safe here. For as long as you need." She turned to him, smiling faintly. "And what about you?" He shrugged, gazing out toward the dark hills. "I'll keep watch. Always do." A long silence fell between them, the kind that said more than words ever could. The firelight danced across their faces, 2 souls battered by life but bound by something stronger than fear. Outside, the coyotes began to howl again. But this time, Clara didn't flinch. She knew she wasn't alone anymore. And somewhere deep in that lonely stretch of land, hope began to grow again, wild, stubborn, and unbreakable.